Welcome to the 𝙿𝙚𝙦 podcast. This series focuses on elevating and inspiring women and girls into or to remain in the tech sector from the classroom to the boardroom. I'm 𝘿𝙚𝙬𝙚𝙦, founder and CEO of 𝘿𝙚𝙬𝙀 and host of the show. Welcome to another episode of 𝙿𝙚𝙦 Women in Tech podcast series. Today we have a remarkable guest with us, Vanessa Eyles, Detective Superintendent at West Midlands Police and the Managing Director of the Cyber Resilience Centre for the West Midlands. Vanessa, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Kelly. It's really good to be able to speak to different people and hopefully share some helpful tips or guidance.
Perfect. Well, you're a bit of a unique guest for us here at 𝙿𝙚𝙦 Women in Tech, being from the police. So before we go into why you are here, it would be great if you could share a little bit about your journey in law enforcement and how you ended up in your current role as Detective Superintendent.
Yeah, so I joined West Midlands Police just over 30 years ago, and I was a bobby on the beat and going to different jobs, and then became a detective, and then went through the different promotion processes bit by bit. I got promoted to sergeant, and then I became a mom, but I thought I want to keep on getting promoted, so I did. But I had to sort of slow it down for a period of time, my promotions. So I'm here now. I'm a detective superintendent, and when I got promoted to superintendent, I was posted by the chief constable to run a business on behalf of policing, which is really, really unusual for the police. It's never been done before. And so I am the managing director of the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre, which is set up to help businesses become cyber safer for free.
Perfect. And for those that are listening in that maybe don't really understand the level of detective superintendent, could you put a bit of context, I don't know, maybe in the business world, kind of what that would, if it can be kind of put on a level, how far up in the police you've actually risen to?
Yeah, so most people join the police at either at a constable level if you're a police officer. So I got promoted to sergeant, then inspector, then chief inspector, and then superintendent. And the reason I'm a detective superintendent is because I became a detective, so investigating more serious offences, more complex offences. And then I became what was called an SIO, a senior investigating officer, so overseeing investigations. So when I was a chief inspector, I worked within the child protection unit, overseeing complex child investigations such as suspicious child deaths or paedophile rings. When I was a DI, I was overseeing attempt murders, kidnaps, shootings across Birmingham. So, some really tough stuff that I had dealt with. So that's why I'm a detective. And then that's the rank that I got to with superintendent. Most superintendents have got probably 100 or so people underneath them that they're overseeing, or lots and lots of risk. So mine's a little bit different in that I've got a business that I'm running, which is really unusual for the police. I suppose the equivalent would be a business of maybe 200 or 300 people, and you're the managing director of it. So that's the equivalent, really. Yeah. But it's a really quirky one because I do a little bit of policing still, even though my day job is managing director of a business. So as I mentioned before, this recording, I'm on duty call out as one of the detective superintendents, and so if my phone goes, then I'll have to take the call. So yeah, that's what I'm juggling.
Sounds like a very busy day job that you've got, and an amazing explanation there for those that might not really understand that journey that you've been on and why you are on our episode today as one of our inspiring women within the business world. I suppose before we move on to more questions about your leadership experience and everything else, what was it that motivated you to pursue a career in policing to that level that you are today? Because I'm sure, you've experienced maybe being the only woman in the room and, being in quite a male-dominated environment. So what motivated you on that journey?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kelly. To some extent, what motivated me was simply working hard, doing the right thing, and getting results. So I just naturally wanted to do that. Some people just naturally want to deliver, perform, change. So a lot of that was who I am really. But there was another part of me that was like, do you know what? The only way we can change things is if we get to the table and we start to influence. And I've been so passionate about diversity, equality, belonging, inclusion for 2 decades now. And so it started off with trying to make sure that women had a voice within policing. And now it's about equality for as many people as possible. And so, sort of 20 years ago, I thought, do you know what? I want to change this. I want to be one of the supervisors that starts making decisions. And so that's why I thought, to change, you've got to be at the table and do that. So that's what motivated me. And of course, the further up the rank structure you go within an organisation, the more you can influence, because the bigger your sphere, the bigger your remit or your role, and the more that you can change and influence, but also the more people you can help. And that's been something I've been really passionate about for almost 20 years. It has been becoming either a mentor or a buddy or a coach, and I've helped lots of people, lots of women, but lots of other people as well, lots of male colleagues, people from different backgrounds, whether it's religious backgrounds or ethnic backgrounds, or people with disabilities, or mental well-being issues, or lack of confidence, or I know one that's really relevant for a lot of women, and it's that sort of imposter syndrome. And I've helped a lot of people with those sorts of issues, and I've been really passionate about that. So the further up you go within an organisation, the more people you can help, and that was what really sort of drove me to step forward.
Perfect. It's great to hear, and couldn't agree with you more. As you rise up, that voice that you have and that ability to make change really does come along. So that role model that you've been, I'm sure, for so many over those years that you've been in the police and helping others, it's that, making sure that as you kind of make the way forward, you leave the rope behind to bring others through. And it's great to hear that that's something that you've been an advocate for. As a woman in, what is a male-dominated industry yourself, it's not completely run by men, and I know that. But I'm sure as you get further up, the numbers get smaller, and there's less people that potentially look like yourself as you grow. What has been some of the biggest hurdles that you've had to face, and how have you overcome these to continue to progress in your career?
Okay, so within policing, I mean, West Mids Police is particularly strong in relation to diversity and equality, and they've won many national awards. And I know that I worked with a fantastic leader, and we really sort of forged ahead in relation to some specialist areas within policing. So, we made sure that we removed barriers. So within West Mids Police, the challenges weren't as many really. You still find those areas. I know there's a crass phrase. You find areas within an organisation where it's almost like the last male bastion area, and so I would see those occasionally, and frankly, I would never let them intimidate me. You don't very often get outright sexism within policing these days. It does happen, but not very often, and I don't tend to see that, because to some extent I set my stall out, and people know that I won't stand for it, and I will challenge and I will question. So I haven't seen as much within the police, West Mids Police. And I've worked for many chief constables, and they've been really progressive, so that's fantastic. Coming over to the cyber sector, so the cyber business sector, I was really nervous actually. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to really sort of come across a lot of sexism within yet another very male dominated sector. And you know what? I really haven't. There's been a couple of moments where I've had sort of, the occasional person who's been rather sexist. but not from cyber security persons, actually. So I went to a networking event to try and spread the word, and it wasn't a very well organised event, and so nobody knew each other and nobody knew what you were supposed to do. And I got there, and somebody said, "Oh, you need to get a sticker and put your name on it." So I went over, and I was stood by this roll of sort of blank stickers, and this chap came over to me and he said, "Oh, are you the person giving out the stickers?" And it was quite clear that he had formed this opinion that because I was a woman, that my role was just to give out stickers. So I turned to him and I said, "No, are you?" At which point he recoiled and was quite shocked. He then came over to the group that I was talking about. So I sort of started networking with my name sticker on. And I was talking to a group of people about my role, managing director, cyber resilience centre, detective superintendent, blah, blah, blah. And they were all like, "Wow, that's really great. Great work that you're doing. Great that you're helping businesses." And he came over, and I did say to him, "But I don't give out the stickers." And I think he was a little stung. But we all laughed about it, and then we moved on. But the reason I've told you that rather unremarkable story is that it does happen, and it's about not accepting it, really. There was no way I was going to acquiesce and hand him a sticker. He could jog right on. But actually, that's a pretty puny example in comparison with having been managing director of a business for 2.5 years, and I've met a lot of people, and I've never experienced sexism within the cybersecurity sector. So I think some of it is about making sure that you walk in and you absolutely appear strong and confident. You might not feel it, but
Yeah.
you make sure that you appear like that, and then people will think, "Oh, she's not to be messed with or not to be ignored." But I remember there was a book written by a lady called Lean In, and that's my natural persona, is that I lean in, and I am quite self-assured in that I'll sort of puzzle something out, and then I will absolutely feel as if I've got a right to speak my thoughts, my opinions. Now, there are times where you'll have people who don't want to hear, and so you have to pick your battles. And there are ways and means, I suppose, but there are ways and means to get promoted and build up your evidence portfolio.
Perfect. I love that. And that stereotype of, you're the woman there and you're the person to give out the stickers. Unfortunately, I'm sure the intention wasn't meant in the way that the gentleman meant it, but I think he learned a big lesson that day. So and your advice there on speaking up, confidence. I always say it when I've mentored from a sales perspective. When I mentor women coming through, I always say it's that swan analogy, and it's on the outside you're this swan and you're amazing and you're confident, you can walk in, but underneath you're panicking and everything else is just going through your head. But if you can go in there and be confident, I think is such a key part. And it's great that you can speak up and you can have that voice and address situations like that. Because I think the more we call it out, that's the only way that change can happen. So it's great to hear. And it is, you say it's not an amazing story, but it happens so often, and it's those little things and those little changes that make a big difference. So thanks a lot for sharing. I mentioned before, obviously, as Detective Superintendent, you are my first Detective Superintendent, and I'm sure you're probably going to be one of probably the only Detective Superintendents that I'm probably going to have on the podcast series. So you're not our typical guest for Elevate Women in Tech, but your extensive career that you've had and navigating that career all the way like you have and risen to the top within your own field, and been the first of running a business through the police as well, I think is one that women that listen to this podcast can definitely relate to. So the episode title is Developing into Leadership by Stealth Mode, which might have our guests thinking, what is this going to actually be about? What do you mean? So if you could elaborate what you mean by developing into leadership by stealth mode.
Yeah, so this is very much my journey, and it's not necessarily relevant to lots of other people's journeys. But when I was a sergeant, I became a mum, and And so I absolutely love being a mom. It's a hugely important role to me. But I didn't necessarily want to stop my career development. And so I had to juggle normal work, being a mom, and also trying to develop towards the next rank promotion. And so how I did that was I suppose what I describe as stealth mode. So what I did is I would sort of work out what I had to do so that I could look after be the mom. So work out what flexibility I did have or I didn't have, and so in relation to being a mom, there's childcare, and there's also sort of actually wanting to be a mom and do the right thing. But I realised that I did have a little bit of capacity for some career development, but it was only limited, and it was in a very restricted way. So I just thought, right, okay, so let's have a look at how I can stretch myself, do something that I haven't done before. And so what I would do is I would volunteer for little roles that I knew that I could do at times that suited me. So, for example, I did a diploma, and I did it. I built my portfolio of evidence, and wrote my thesis in the times that suited me, and so that worked for me. I also did I volunteered for some roles, such as, and this is where listeners might sort of yawn a little bit, but I volunteered for things such as health and safety lead, or delivering performance in relation to something that was maybe a dry subject, but I would be able to sort of do the work in the background at a time that suited me. So, when little one was sleeping, or at childcare or something like that. And so I'd volunteer for roles that I knew I could take on. And what I did is I also had a look at my experience, my portfolio that I had at the moment, my evidence, and I think, okay, well, what haven't I done before? So I would constantly be stretching myself. And so what happened was I started to build up gradually, bit by bit, different bits of evidence, different portfolios where I had some exposure, some experience. And so I started to grow my network, my exposure. I started to deliver on stuff that not other people really wanted to do. A lot of my peers who wanted promotion would always go for the big Gucci jobs, the big exciting jobs, the big sexy roles, the high profile jobs. And that's fine, but everybody would try and volunteer for those. So I would quietly just volunteer for health and safety, diversity and inclusion, or, other stuff such as, messaging or performance management in relation to some of the sort of the drier subject matter. And so I would build up my network, my experience, my evidence, my exposure to the organisation, and I would be able to demonstrate how I was delivering. And all of this was whilst being a mom and making sure that being a mom was such an important role for me. And so I'd go for promotion processes, and I would have a stack of evidence that was standard business, but stuff that maybe some of the Gucci volunteers didn't want to deal with. And so I'd get promoted, and people would be like, oh gosh, Vanessa's done well, she's got promoted. And then I'd go for another promotion, and people started looking, thinking, she's probably going to do quite well, because again, I would build up by stealth. So I would take on this role or that role and volunteer. But again, it was whilst being a mom. And it got to the stage where when I went for the promotion process for superintendent, my peers were all looking at me, knowing I was going to do really well. And lo and behold, I did. So it's that quietly just picking off little bits of evidence, little opportunities that you can juggle whilst you've got other things going on in your life. And it's not just about being a mom, because not everybody wants to have children. Some people may have caring responsibilities, or might have, another role that they're doing out of work. And so juggling those roles with your day job and trying to develop yourself, that's what I'm talking about by stealth mode. Quietly picking up those bits and pieces that you can manage on top of your day job and your outside life.
Perfect. I love that explanation. And it's interesting because I've interviewed someone else on a previous podcast who is a VP of engineering, and she had a very similar story, how she would pick out those projects that were so important to the business, but they're a bit dry, not the most sexiest of ones to go after, but they're the glue that makes the organisation work. And like you said, it gives you that exposure, it gives you that visibility that sometimes, in this instance, the male colleagues are just missing that opportunity because they're going after the big tickets. And I think it's such a great example for women that are listening in, like you said, that might have care and responsibilities. They might have childcare. They're about to become a mum for the first time and trying to figure out, well, how can I continue this journey on? It's possible. You just need to take that time, sit back. If you've got a mentor, this is how a mentor can really help you grow and continue to grow when potentially, life changes are about to come your way. So I really love that analogy and that example, and exactly why stealth mode is definitely one that can help you rise to the top. For women that are aspiring to get into leadership that might be listening in, what advice would you give to them on building their leadership capabilities or their leadership values, even when they might not have the loudest voice in the room, or they might have that imposter syndrome that's holding them back?
Yeah, so I know that you've done quite a bit on imposter syndrome, and it's a really important one to understand, recognize when it's affecting you, and have those coping strategies so that you can get over it as swiftly as possible. And actually, it's something that what people need to realize is that it's almost like exercise or mental well-being. It's concepts that you need to put into practice, and the more you practice it, the easier it will get, and the less that imposter syndrome will affect you. And one of the ways that you can do that is if you're having those butterflies, you're worried, you're stressed because you've got some change. Well, frankly, you need to do that more often.
Yeah.
Test yourself, stretch yourself. But also, if you haven't got the loudest voice at the table, and I know that there are many environments where it can be quite hostile for women, that's where you maybe do things a different way. So you have those conversations in the corridors, or you network, and you make sure that you build up your network of supporters or allies quietly and stealth mode again,
Yeah.
so that actually when you do speak up, more people will be receptive to the fact that you are speaking. But I suppose also, if you want to develop your leadership, it's about researching, well, what do other leaders do? And so, get a coach, get a mentor, do that networking and see what other people are doing. Constantly look and listen. So, for example, with West Midlands Police, it's about sort of 11,000 people strong, usually, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less. And I'm constantly watching who's going where, and listening when people are speaking, or if people write a blog, I read that, because you become what's called omnicompetent, which is you learn and you become confident about a wide range of stuff. So, for example, if you are working in a cake making factory, you don't just learn about making wedding cakes. You learn about making Easter cakes, birthday cakes, chocolate cakes, fruit cakes. You learn about making cakes that would sell really well over in Japan or in America, whatever. You don't just have a very narrow vision.
Yeah.
But also, go on to start following certain people. So I follow Simon Sinek, and also the owner and CEO of Gymshark, and a number of other people. I listen to them. They're positive, they're professional, they're forward thinking, and I like that. Read a book by one of those leaders, those influencers, and start to challenge yourself about how you can not become them, but take some of the essence, some of the messages that they talk about, so that actually you become a better person, leader yourself.
Perfect. I love that. And omnicompetent. That's a new one that I've learned, but it's definitely one that I think I do and wasn't aware. So it's how I learn, and I think it's probably how most people learn as well. Um, I know you're passionate about diversity, equality, belonging, and inclusion. You mentioned it earlier in the episode. In your opinion, how can organisations create environments that truly support women's growth and advancement, and what practical steps could organisations take to impact gender diversity positively?
Okay, so yeah, I've been doing this for quite a while. So some of it is about uh, not just ticking the box, but really trying to understand how to influence change. It's very much a cultural thing. It needs to start at the very, very top of the organisation. It needs to start at the very, very bottom of the organisation, rank-wise, and it needs to filter all the way through. And equality and diversity, it's a bit like integrity or health and safety. It's got to be a golden thread that touches everything within the organisation. Now, for some people, particularly board members, in relation to diversity and inclusion, what will press their buttons and get them on board with this concept is learning the financial positives about diversity and equality, such as if you've got a problem solving team, that team will be better if they are a diverse team, because they will think in different ways. They will have lots of different life experiences, lots of different puzzling and solving experiences. And so that's really positive. It will enable you to be much more forward thinking, much more inclusive of the customers that you want to sell to, because actually customers are becoming more diverse. And also you'll be able to recruit from a far bigger talent pool, and so you'll be able to get the best talent as opposed to just looking for one niche section of the talent pool. So it's about learning how you can press people's buttons to get on board with diversity. It's about learning from other people or other organisations where they have excelled at something like this. So, for example, I'd happily say to people, have a look at how West Midlands Police have improved their diversity and inclusion. That they have, as I said earlier on, they've won national awards for some of the work that they've done. And that's through looking at selection policies, processes, structures. But it's also about doing some of that, as a leader, stop and look around you at your board table, at your middle management, at your workforce. Have a look. If you're looking around the table and it's all old white men, then how on earth are you going to be able to consider the issues, the positives, the benefits of women? So bring in a woman to start thinking about how to improve things. Bring in a woman to help other women get into positions of responsibility, positions of leadership, positions of influence. If you've got an advertising photo and it's all old white men, or if it's an awards ceremony or an award scheme that you're going to, or an awards night, and you look around at everybody who's gone on stage when you won an award for your organisation and it's all old white men, then you need to have a look at who you are choosing to represent your business. Now, I'm not saying old white men are bad. Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is, let's broaden the people that we are including. So have a look at your selection criteria. Are you insisting that people work within an office full time and then some? Are you insisting that they have to be in the office from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m.? Are you refusing flexi working? Are you, have a look at who you're training. So if you are putting out some courses that people need to develop or stretch themselves or get promoted, and those courses are only being given to one category of people, then you're missing out and you're blocking people from those courses. So there's lots of different ways that you can have some improvement. and I know this is a really frumpy phrase, but it's something that I do believe in. What gets measured gets done. And so if you start looking at, well, actually, what is the ethnicity or the gender makeup of this team, this department, this organisation, and you monitor that on a quarterly basis or an annual basis, then you can start to see, well, actually, we've made some real great improvements in that department with having a lot more women working there. But actually, in that department over there, we've got absolutely no improvement whatsoever. Then you can start to focus your attention. So, for example, I worked within a large department within West Midlands Police a number of years ago, and there was a department where we had some great success in recruiting women. It was the Major Emergency Planning department, and we recruited lots of women, and that was great. But we realised that on the firearms department, or the dog section, we weren't recruiting many women. So we started to look at the selection process, the training, some of the structures, but also we did stuff like open days or come along and have and shadow somebody, and we'd sort of release information like blogs or whatever, and that really helped interest. And it helped people think, actually, I can have a go. And we made sure that the leadership within those departments got on board with what had to happen, because we told them of the benefits for the department, the benefits for serving the public. So there's lots and lots of ways that you can drive change.
Brilliant. There's so many great examples there that you've shared with the audience, and that's for women that are looking at where their next step might be, and also for those hiring teams, senior execs, like you said, that sit at that board table, why it is such a key thing, and that diversity of thought, particularly if we look at the tech industry, they're typically building something for someone, and 9 times out of 10, they're not building it just for one type of person, they're building it for everybody. And if you've not got that diversity of thought, then your products are not going to be built to represent the audience that you're looking to sell to. So I really appreciate that, and there's some really good bits of advice in there. Switching gears slightly now, it'd be great for us to dive into your work at the Cyber Resilience Centre. Like you said, it's the first time that a detective superintendent has been put into managing a business. So where you're the managing director of that organisation, so can you tell us who the Cyber Resilience Centre are, what the problem is that they're here to solve in the West Midlands area, and just a bit of an overview?
Okay, so in 2016, the government realised that cyber attacks on the UK was a huge threat, a threat to employment, security, stability, the financial sort of stability of Britain. And so it set up the National Cyber Security Centre to give out lots of messaging to people. And it realised that actually the messaging just wasn't penetrating the business sector very well. It wasn't penetrating outside of the London area, and it wasn't penetrating very small businesses. It's continued to do some research, the government did, and they realised that actually small, micro and sole trader businesses continued to be attacked in cyber attacks. And actually, they were going under as a result of these cyber attacks. And so it started to have a look at this, and it decided, well, look, that the NCSC is not doing what we need to get through to those businesses. So they decided to set up these cyber resilience centres on a regional level. So there's actually one of me across the whole of England and Wales in the different areas. And so what we do is we try and reach out to small, micro and sole trader businesses to explain to them, you are a target. The fact that you don't have much cash in the bank doesn't mean that you're safe from being attacked. Because actually, stuff like data is really, really valuable to cyber attackers, because they can steal it from you. They can stop you from having access to it, which means your business goes under. Great, a tick in the box for the cyber attacker. But also the cyber attacker can sell that information on the dark web. And then on the dark web, there'll be another sort of fraudster or whatever, and they will buy that data and they will target people within that data. So let's just say, for example, you are, I don't know, you're a children's nursery. And you have lots of children that come to your nursery. So you'll have names, ages, dates of birth, home addresses of lots of little toddlers. You'll have details of the parents, their banking details, and also special educational needs of the children. So if you sell that information on the dark web, some fraudster can come along and target the parents, because they can probably predict their passwords, which is probably, the name of their child or their pet, and they can hack into their accounts, or they can send phishing emails to them to rip them off and defraud them out of money. But they can also store that information about those children, and if you imagine that information about those children will be relevant for the next potentially 80 years.
Yeah.
So that information is really valuable, and they can target those children. So if you've got a child that suffers from, I don't know, let's just say epilepsy, then they might target that child because they will know that child has got health issues and might be more nervous about where they eat, when they're an adult, or their parents might be nervous about cooking recipes. And so you can target people with this little bit of information. And once it's out there, it's out there. So small, micro and sole trader businesses think that they are not vulnerable, so they don't protect themselves. Also, they don't have much money or much cybersecurity knowledge to know what to do to protect themselves. And so they are a really sweet spot for cyber attackers to target. Another reason why they're vulnerable is some cyber attackers want to get through and target really big organisations. But a lot of those big organisations have got great cyber security. So that's all good and well for those big organisations. So what the cyber attackers then do is they go through the supply chain for those big businesses. So if you imagine I'm not going to name businesses because it might look as if they're being attacked or targeted. But if you imagine a really large organisation that employs, I don't know, let's say 10,000 people, it will have a lot of supply chains. And those supply chains will be smaller, and they will have less security. And that is how the cyber attackers will get into the bigger businesses. So that's the problem we're trying to help. We're trying to help businesses realise that they are vulnerable. We're trying to then help them become cyber safer. And we give them the National Cyber Security Centre advice, but we make it accessible. So we do like the 10 easy steps, or presentation to give to your board, or exercise in a box. We do some networking events, and all of this is totally free because I'm a copper trying to prevent cybercrime. So we give this stuff for free. We also have some services that we sell, but I'm not here to talk about that because actually I'm here to help businesses for free, and that's my main priority. Some of the services that we sell are really affordable because we use cyber degree students to deliver them, but they're supervised by a senior, and that senior is paid for by the Home Office. So that's what we're about. We're trying to help smaller businesses for free so that the whole region becomes cyber safer. And the West Mid Cyber Resilience Centre covers the 4 police force areas, which is West Mids, West Mercia, Warwickshire and Staffordshire.
Perfect. What a great initiative that, for the government to realise that the National Cyber Security Centre wasn't hitting those small businesses, and how the regional support is there to set up, and the fact that it's free as well. So yeah, for anyone listening in, that, if I can share more information as well after this with the podcast episode on how to connect, it's a definite no-brainer just to go and check it out and see what's in there. If it's free, why not? And if it's going to help protect your organisation. The next step I was going to say was for any businesses that are listening in and thinking, I need a bit of that, or, oh, I'm interested because it's not something that's on my radar. And that could be your sole traders, like you said. It might be an independent contractor who's got a little business, but they do bits and pieces of work with bigger organisations, because that's typically, like you said, how it works. How would they connect with the Cyber Resilience Centre?
Yeah, and that's where we make it as easy as possible. So people are very welcome to Google me or go onto LinkedIn and have a look for me. But an even easier way is actually join the Cyber Resilience Centre. So if people Google WMCRC, so that's West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre, then it will bring up our website. And you have a look at the homepage. After about 20 seconds, a pop-up comes up and it asks you for your name, what your business is, what your email address is, and there might be another question or two. And then you're in, and then you get stuff sent to you, and we sort of help you through bit by bit. And I try and describe this as, so it's a little bit like the government health campaign, Couch to 5K.
Yeah.
You can see where I'm going with this, can't you, Kelly? I'm trying to take businesses from 0 to 5K so that they become cyber safer. And of course, all that stuff is for free through the West Mid Cyber Resilience Centre. And so that's what we're there to help them. We're not there to make a profit, because the business is police-led, part home office funded, and completely not for profit.
And even more of a reason why businesses should want to reach out and get involved, because it's such a huge topic. It, like you said, it cripples so many businesses, takes people out, takes people's livelihoods away from them, that it's actually free resources that are out there versus, there's tons of consultancies that you can approach and independent people providing advice. But why go to that when you're a small business, when it's there, it's a free resource and they can maximise it. So I will definitely be sharing the details with the episode and we can get more information out about, and I'm sure anyone interested obviously then can go to the website and sign up. We're right at the end of the episode now. So, I've really enjoyed speaking to you today, hearing about your journey, 30 years in the police, obviously your experience as a senior woman within your industry, but also how relatable that is to any woman that's looking to rise through the ranks, and how they can do that in stealth mode, if that's something, it's that considered approach, thinking about those little projects that really give them that visibility, that opportunity to have a voice in rooms where they may not be able to normally get to if they've just going after general projects and everything else. So I really enjoyed everything that we've talked about. But my final question to you, Vanessa, today would be, what message would you like to leave with our listeners, especially to the women who are navigating their own career paths?
Yeah, gosh, what one bit? I think it's about feeling self-assured. And so part of that is combating, that imposter syndrome. Part of that is about learning, actually, I am good enough and I have got a right to speak. So that if they don't allow you to speak, or they don't listen when you do speak, you're in the wrong room and you need to get out and you need to go somewhere else, because you are good enough. In fact, you're more than good enough. You are part of the solution. You are part of the way forward. So it's about having that self-assured way of thinking, not becoming unpleasant, but being self-assured, doing it in your own way, your own style, sometimes by stealth, but making sure that you are great. You are part of the solution. You are part of the way forward.
Perfect. I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your insights, empowering women that are listening in, and just great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Kelly, and thanks for letting me talk about the Cyber Resilience Centre.
No worries at all. And to our listeners, remember that leadership knows no gender. Keep pushing boundaries and making an impact. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Elevate Women in Tech.